Alright, welcome everybody to the online training for the JSON Snippet Keeper. This is just going to be an introduction to what the plugin is and how to use it, and I'll give you a couple examples of ways I've used it, and then you can hopefully expand on that and find a way to help your projects out. So first and foremost, this is the JSON Snippet Keeper plugin available in the Buzztouch plugin market. And the first thing that you need to think about is that this is not like other plugins where it's not a screen type that's going to end up in your app. Instead, this is a control panel modification, and essentially it's going to become a workflow modification, hopefully. This is something that I've been using for a while with Buzztouch to help speed up my development time and to make tedious tasks, repetitious tasks, a lot easier. So I got a couple examples for you. I'm going to show them to you. I'm starting off here with a simple 2.0 project. I've called this Snippet Test. And what I did was I created up a couple screens, and all this is it has a home screen, which is just a button menu. On that button menu is only going to have one button, and that's going to lead to this list menu that I've called Contact Me. And from that Contact Me menu, I'm going to have three other screens coming off of it: the Email Me, the Call Me, and the Text Me screen. So this is an example, not yet showing the plugin, but showing the typical way of producing an app with Buzztouch. You create your screens, you go into each screen, and you set everything the way you want it. Like, for example, we go into this list menu screen and we go through all these settings here for the background color, the row height, the colors, the background images. We have to set in the child items, or the items that are going to be in the list menu, which in this case is the three screens that I've created already. Then we need to go into each one of those three screens and set up the settings for those. And when we're all done, we put it all together and we end up with an app that looks like this. So here's the home screen, which just has one button. I didn't do any customization on here. This is the Contact Me screen. You can see I've got my background image, a background color, I've got a text color, rounded menu, and then my three child items, or my three sub-screens from that menu. So this is the way that you would normally make an app. And in my example, I'm proposing to you, what if this Contact Me menu ended up in every single app that you created? If you create it once and you set all the settings up, that's not a big deal. But if I had to do this for my second app and set these all screens up, it might take me, by the time I get used to setting up these screens, it might take me a couple minutes to get them all set up. The list menu may be a little bit more, because it's got a lot more information, and I have to set the images for the different screen types, large device versus small device, and get all that information in there and link all the screens together. So maybe it takes me 5 or 10 minutes to get it all set up. Well, with the JSON Snippet Keeper, we can do all that with just one click. So what I've got here next is going to be a project that I've called the JSON Dupe, and all this is, it's going to be a duplicate of that first project, and in this case I'm using the JSON Snippet Keeper. So when we look at the screens here, I have the same home screen, just a button menu screen, that only going to have one button on it, and that's going to be leading to that whole other Contact Me menu. In this case, it's just one screen here. So what I did for this is, the way that I usually do this, oops, that's not going to be it. That's not it either. So never mind that. What I usually do is I will manually create, or in this case I have taken the JSON out of the first app. So when I look back at this first app, the Snippet Test app that I created, I've got my home screen and I've got my 4 screens, and these 4 screens here are the ones that I want to take, and I want to save myself from ever having to create them again. So when we look at this configuration data, inside this, what will become the BT config text file for my project, either in Xcode or Eclipse, And I can see here, starting down here with the BT screens, this is where all of my screens live. So the first one here is the home screen. It has the item ID, the item type, which is the menu button, the nickname, the navbar title, and then the child items. So starting down here, it's going to be the screens for the send email, the send SMS, the phone me or the place call screen, and then down here the contact me screen, which is actually the menu list simple. So this is the 4 screens that I'm trying to duplicate in my second app. So if I take all this JSON, which is the text here that I've got highlighted, that actually creates those 4 screens, and I copy that and paste it into this JSON Snippet Keeper, and that's all I've done is I've pasted it in here. That's going to essentially take one screen or one little plugin here and create all 4 of those screens for me, already having all the settings set up for them. All the advanced settings that I've set for the menus, linking the 3 submenus or the subscreens to the list menu. All that's going to be done right here. So once I paste that in there, it's just going to create those screens and essentially save me from having to do anything. So I copy it, paste it, and it's done. Now if this is something that I'm going to save over and over again, or something I'm going to use in several different apps, then I've got this option down here to save to the Snippet Keeper. And if I select that, I can type in a name. Let's say contact me. And I'm not going to actually save this because I've already got it saved up here. And you'll see that I've got existing JSON snippets, and that contact me menu is already in here. So if this was already blank and I was starting a new project, all I'd have to do is open this up, click that, and then come back down to save, and it would save all of those screens back to this one plugin. So let me show you what happens when I run that app. This is going to be the JSON dupe app. Same thing, home menu with just one item, contact me, and you can see that it's exactly the same. So this is a very simple example of having just one little menu with a couple items in it that I can recreate over and over again with just one click, now that I've got it set up in my control panel. And that JSON snippet is going to live in my control panel, and all of these pre-existing ones that I've saved are going to be in here for every single app that I have, every project that I open. So if I open a brand new project, they're already in there. It stays in my control panel. Now let me back up real quick. While we're talking about control panels, you can see this note here that if you're using a self-hosted Buzztouch control panel, if you've got your own control panel on your own web server somewhere, then right now you have to make a modification to get this plugin to work. After you buy the plugin and install it on your control panel, then you have to actually download this. In this case, it's going to be a text file. You can see down at the bottom it says it's a text file. You're going to download that to your computer. You're going to rename it to a PHP file instead of a text file, and you're going to upload it to this directory right here, your BT server directory /API/app, and then you're going to overwrite the index.php. Because this is a control panel modification plugin, David is giving us the file that we need to put into our control panel to update it to be able to understand how this plugin works. Eventually there will be, the next time that he updates the control panel to a new version, then he will put this automatically in there, so you'll only have to do it the one time. So now that you've got that understanding, let me show you one more thing here, one little advanced thing that you have to do. Now all I did here was I created, in my screens, I created a home screen, and I've created this Contact Me plugin which has all those other screens. Now the only problem that we have right now is this home screen. If I wanted to add the submenu to it, the Contact Me, when I add this to it and tell it that it's going to be a JSON Snippet Keeper, it really doesn't know what kind of screen that is. It just knows that it wants to link to whatever is inside that. So let's go back here real quick and look inside this JSON Snippet Keeper. And this, remember, this is just the stuff that I pasted from my first app. Now the only problem is we see here that this screen item ID that I've got bolded here, that's easy to get to. This is the item ID of the Snippet Keeper page, that one that I saved that called Contact Me. Now we can have several of these snippets in our projects, and when we get to the next project you'll see that I'm going to have several in there. But in this case I've only got one, and this is the item ID for it. Now this is important because this is what that other menu, that button menu, is looking for. It wants to get to this screen right here. Well, this screen doesn't do anything. It's the screens that live inside this JSON data that do stuff. So the screen that I actually want to get to was that list menu. So when I come down to this list menu, and it's got an item ID here, this is not what it first said. It was originally a different number when I pasted it over, and I have to actually copy this screen ID for the snippet and paste it right here, so that when that button menu looks for the screen with this number, it actually finds it in here. So now when we look at this app's config data, just like the first one, we come down to the BT screens, we've got the menu button screen, and then after that, all of this right here is the information that I pasted in there into that snippet keeper. So it gets copied right into the BT config text, and it's there for good. Now, what makes this important is, in the past, if we wanted to do something like this, if we wanted to manually create screens or to duplicate screens, we couldn't just paste something into our control panel. We could never get to a place that we could paste actual JSON into the control panel. We'd have to paste it into our Xcode project. So if we had an Xcode project and we pasted stuff into this BT config text file, we would have to then, for this app to keep this data and its information, we'd have to delete this data URL. And when we do that, we cut to like an offline app, so that's not looking at the control panel anymore. And the problem with that is, if we ever need to make any changes to that app or to the information that we pasted in there, we'd have to do a full update, a full new recompile, and send a new binary to Apple or to Google. And so, sometimes that's okay, sometimes you don't want to do that. So in this case, the way that it's set up now, we can actually change things in our control panel and directly change the contents of that BT config text. So that's a good thing and that's a bad thing. It's good because it's very helpful, and it's bad because if you mess up the JSON formatting, then you can really mess things up. So there is a link in the both here in the config data and at the actual snippet for this JSON lint web page, where you can copy stuff and paste it in and validate it to make sure it's valid. And just remember that just because something is valid doesn't mean that it's correct. It just means that it's valid. But at least gives us a peace of mind that the app isn't going to crash saying that the config data is corrupt or it's not valid. So this was a simple little example of taking a bunch of screens, putting them into one snippet, saving it in our control panel where we can pick it up into any app that we do. So if you're still following me, I'm going to show you a next step up from that. So this project here is called the Big Snippet, and this is just going to have more screens to it. So I'm going to show you first what the app actually is. And then I'm going to show you how it was built. So you can see here that we've got the home screen is a list menu, just a simple list menu with 25 entries in it, all called PDF 1 through 25. And each one of these is going to lead off to a PDF screen. Now in my example, I made them all lead to the same PDF just for this the sake of simplicity of only having to copy one PDF file into my project. But you can see that I could have 25 different PDF files on here, or any different type of screen. If I had a long list of maybe HTML docs or a long list of images, just whatever I wanted to lead to. So historically, we'd have to go into a project, we'd have to create a home screen, and then we'd have to create 25 PDF screens. We'd have to configure them all up to be looking for the right PDF, give them a name, and then link them all into the list menu. And that's a little time consuming, especially if that number raises from 25 up to maybe 100 or 200. You can see how that would start taking a long time. You'd have to create a lot of screens. So in this case, I'm going to use the JSON Snippet Keeper to manually create some screens for myself, paste them in there, and get them done all quick. So let's look at the screens to see how I did this one. So in this case, this PDF file right here, it's not even needed. I'll tell you in a second why it's still in the control panel, but for the most part, these two screens are the only things that are doing anything in that app. So I've got my home screen, and I've got this JSON Snippet Keeper that's called, well, it should be called PDF screens, but it's called PFD screens. That's a typo. But the contents of this Snippet Keeper, the actual snippet itself, is what's going to make this whole thing work. So let's look at the home screen real quick. All right, let's look at the JSON first. So what I did on this one was I went and looked at why I created this one PDF screen here, this PDF1, was I wanted to go into the configuration data and find that PDF1, which is right here. Pay no attention to all the other ones. Actually, it's this one right here. I created this manually so I could see what the JSON format was. Then I copied that, I pasted it into my favorite text editor, and I pasted it one time, and then I pasted it another 24 times to get all my screens. Then I just went through with my cursor and cursored down and changed all the PDF ones to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc. Very quick job. I changed the item nicknames to relate to the same as the item IDs. Now this item ID that I manually created, it can be anything as long as it's unique. So the only thing I caution you of is that if you are creating item IDs, just have some housekeeping of what they are inside your app and make sure that you don't duplicate them somewhere. So I've got my item ID, my item type, which is a BT screen PDF doc, the item nickname, which I've manually created to match the item ID, the local file name. In this case, you would have your 25 different PDFs right here, but I just made them all the same. The navbar title text, this is the title text that goes on the top of your screen. So I made that match the nickname. And that's it. So I've got my valid JSON. All I did was I pasted it once, pasted another 24 times, changed a couple numbers in here, and this whole big chunk of text, that is all the JSON I need to create 25 screens in my app. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste it back into this screen that I made, the PDF screens, and that's all it is. Once I paste it in there and the app compiles, it's going to put this right into the BT config text, and now I've got 25 screens in there that I did not have to create manually in the control panel. And any advanced properties that we set in here, if we set different properties in here, like you can see the force refresh, you can put all those in there and it sets all that up for you. Now the only problem with this is if we go back now and we look at the home screen menu, which was our list menu screen, normally we would take our list menu and up here in the top where we add things in, we would add in all 25 of those screens to be my child items or my sub screens. The only problem is when I go here to look at select, it doesn't know, you can forget that this PDF one's supposed to even be here. It doesn't know those other 25 PDF screens are manually created. So it doesn't know about the ones that we've put into that snippet. So the way that we get around this is if the control panel doesn't know that the screens exist, then we're going to have to tell the app that the screens exist by using a screen data URL. And all this is this PDF list text right here that I've got hosted on Dropbox account. This is going to be the child item information for this list menu. Now this is something that we can do anytime that we want to, and this is a good example of an output of the list menu tool that I made a while back. But all that is, if we look at that, this is the child items for that list menu screen. So we didn't even have to go into the control panel and add all of those screens to the list menu. All we've done is we've created this text file that holds all these child items. So you can see each one of these child items, the important things are the title text. This is what actually says here on each of the row items. So I've got the title text the way I want it. And then right here, the load screen with item ID, it's going to look for this PDF1 in my app somewhere. It's going to look for that item ID somewhere in my app. And I know it's in my app because I put it in that snippet. So as long as all of these match the screens that are in my snippet, then it's all going to link up. Now I manually created this by doing, some more copy and paste. I've pasted one child item in here and then pasted another 24 times and changed the numbers on it. So you can do that manually, or you can use the list menu tool to do the same thing. And it just creates this file. You host this file somewhere, and then you just tell the list menu that this data URL, all that is that's the screen or the text file that tells this list menu what child items it has. So it overrides anything that it's got in this control panel, which we didn't even set up anything in here. So I set all my other properties in here, give it the data URL, and that's how we can get all 25 of those screens all linked to the home screen just from these two screens right here. So that's another example of using the JSON Snippet Keeper. Now these 25 screens that I created, I could again also save these to the Snippet Keeper. So if I was going to load these same 25 PDFs in another app, all I have to do is do one click to add those in there. Alright, so let me show you one more example of getting a little bit bigger in scope, so you can get a good idea of maybe something that you can use this for. So I've got this next app that I've called the Nested JSON app. And what this is, let me show you the actual app itself. I've got a home screen here, which is just a list menu with one item called Nested Menu. And when I go into that nested menu, I've got another list menu with, in this case, 12 weeks worth of what will be fitness training. So 12 weeks in this list, and it could go as long as I wanted it to. Each one of these is going to go to a button menu screen that has 4 items on here. So it's got a video message, a running schedule, a weekly inspiration, and a Facebook share. So all 4 of these, as you know, will lead to another page. This is a page, this is a page, this is a page, and this is a page that we'd all have to create. So if we look at this, we've got a home menu, plus we've got another list menu. The list menu has 12 button menus that it links to. Each of those 12 button menus have 4 other screens that it goes to. So all in total, this would be 62 pages that I would have to create in my control panel to make just this little sub menu, just this nested menu work. Now of course I'm going to have other things in this app, so this is just 62 screens that I want to save myself. So let's look to see how this was set up. When I look at my screens here, I'm going to have my home screen, which was my list menu. That's going to lead to my nested menu, which was another list menu, and that's the one that held the 12 weeks. And then those 12 weeks are going to lead to button menus, which actually live right here in this menu screens. And each of those menu screens had 4 pages that it goes to, which are going to end up in these 4 individual screens. So let me show you how I put this all together. again, what I would normally do is I would set up one full set of pages exactly how I wanted them, and then I would go and start cutting up the config text out of that, cutting up the JSON out of that, and bringing it into my text editor. So when I look at the nested screen here, that's all I did was I pasted the BT config text in here. Then I started looking in there for the different items that I needed to start making these screens. So you can see here I've got my running schedule pages, which in this case was a PDF document. So you can see that I gave it a nickname, an item ID, an item type, and these item types here are from a 1.5 app, but the same thing would work with a 2.0. Just knowing the correct item type, of course. And then navbar title, and then the local file name. So this right here, this little chunk of text, makes up all 12 of my PDF files. So those PDF screens. Same thing for the Facebook screens. Here's my 12 Facebook screens. Here's my 12 video messages. And here's my 12 weekly inspiration pages, which are just custom HTMLs or HTML docs in this case. And then, so those are my 4 screens that end up being this FB screens, WI screens for weekly inspiration, RS screens for running schedule, that's my PDF docs, and then VM, my videos, my video message screens. So all 4 of those are my snippets that make up these 4 chunks of text that I've shown you. Now, in all honesty, I could have copied all of this, all 48 of these pages, and put it into one snippet. So I could have had really just one big snippet with all that text in there. But just for housekeeping reasons, I kept it all separate, just in case if I was troubleshooting, and when I was troubleshooting, one of the PDF screens wasn't loading up, and I thought maybe I had a typo, I'd know exactly where to go. I'd go straight to my RS screens, look at the JSON that's in there, find out if I mistyped or misspelled one of the PDF files, and then I could fix it real quick. But just as easily I could have all 5 of these snippets live in one snippet, so this could be a 3-page menu, setting up what would have been 62 pages in the traditional way of creating them. So let's look back at this text editor. So these are my 48 screens, my actual what I call my content screens, my movies, my PDFs, my HTML docs. And this right here is my weekly menu screens. So the 12 button screens that need to be created, those are all right here. If I look at this is week 1. And week 1 has the actual nickname and item ID and item type of this menu button. And then it's got the 4 child items. And it's all set up to have the correct button sizes and the background pictures for all of these child items. So all of that I'd have to set up 12 times plus link all 48 of these pictures is all done just by simple cutting and pasting of text and manipulating the screens. So all of this text here for these 12 button menus is what lives inside this menu screen here. So all those snippets there save me creating the 62 screens. And the same thing happens with this nested menu. Since this nested menu, this is the list menu that has the 12 weeks that lead off to the button screens, it doesn't know those screens exist, so I can't add them in here like I usually do. So in this case I had to use another screen data URL and create a text file that told what those child items were, what those 12 child items. Once I list what those 12 child items are, all the button screens know what the child items are, so I don't have to do anything special with those because those are all right here in the app. All the child items linked to each of the button menus is already set up. So in this case, this was 62 screens that would have needed to be created that I could replace with really 3 screens. In this case, to keep it more organized, I've got it spread out to 5 JSON snippets and 2 menu screens. So that in a nutshell is what the JSON snippet tool, at least that's what I use it for. Just remember that any one of these snippets that I've created for one of these apps, I could still save into here and pull up in any app. And when you do pull one of these up, now this was the Facebook, the FB screens. If I click on any one of these, you can see that it just simply overwrites it. Here now it's the WIs, now it's the VMs. And as soon as I hit save, it's going to save that for right into the config text. So if I didn't want to change any of that, then I just back out of it and it's all fine. So that's the JSON snippet tool in a nutshell. I do encourage you to play around with it and try to think of different ways that you can save yourself some time. We've been looking for a long time for a way to duplicate an app quickly, and this is one of those ways that you could. If I needed to create a second app similar to one I've already got created, and I didn't want to have to manually create each of those pages, I can go into the first app, start snipping out some of the JSON text from the config data, pasting it in large chunks into a new app, and as long as I can link everything together through the menus, then I'm going to save myself a whole bunch of time. Another example that I gave on the podcast a couple weeks back was with a quiz. Now the quiz screen has so many options in it. It's probably got the most advanced properties of any screen that we have so far, any plugin that we have so far. You've got the points per answer, you've got the background colors, the graphics, the font size, just everything. Just takes a long time to set one of those up. And I've got an app that I created that, even in its simplest form, I've got 4 categories here of quizzes, and when I go to any one of these categories, it's got a link to 3 different quizzes being different links. So to set this up, this is 3 different quizzes here times 4, so I'd have 12 quizzes in this. Now I'm not even talking about the time it takes to create the actual question data for it, but just to set up each one of these with the right background, the right fonts, the right colors, and make them all the same, I'd have to do that over and over again 12 different times. Whereas with this one, I could create it once, make it a snippet, paste it in there another 11 times, and then all I'd have to do is change the actual question data, which I store in a text file, and change that for each one, and I've got 12 different quiz screens where I really only created one and then just made snippet out of it and pasted it back in, 12 times total. So like I said, I do encourage you to play around with it. If you do have any questions at all, if you still don't have a good idea of how to use it, or if you want to know if there's something that you want to try that you don't know if it's going to work or not, just send me a PM or send me an email and ask me, and I'll be happy to help you out with it. If you have trouble with some of your JSON, if it's giving you a fit and the compiler is saying that it's invalid, or I guess the simulator would tell you that it's invalid, the compiler doesn't care. If the simulator tells you that your JSON is invalid, then let me know. If you can't work through it, you can maybe send me a copy of your btconfig text, and I'll try to see if I can find where the problem is. But thank you so much for listening to me ramble on about this thing. I really want to help people understand how it's used and see if you guys can make your workflow a little bit more efficient. Thanks again, and ask me any questions in the PMs. I'll talk to you guys later.